Hello, I'm Davies. Today I want to talk a bit about consciousness. I watched the other day a 2014 lecture by the well-respected physicist Michio Kaku, in which he identified 3 levels of consciousness. Roughly speaking, they broke down to level 1 consciousness, which perhaps worms, amoebas had, which was an understanding of only of the here and now. The level 2 consciousness was more applicable to animals, particularly lower order animals like reptiles, that really had no idea of a future. They didn't do much planning, they lived for the here and now, but perhaps had some sort of knowledge of the past. For instance, a Komodo dragon knew from past experience that biting a buffalo's legs resulted in him getting a feed a day later when the animal died, and he followed his prey by the use of his smell. The 3rd level of consciousness he described was attributable to humans and of course to some of the higher mammals, and this gives them the idea of planning. It gives them a sense of the future. As I'm watching his talk, I'm beginning to think, well, hang on, there's some sort of correlation here between his 3 levels of consciousness and my 3-dimensional time, idea of 3-dimensional time. You might recall that earlier we talked about the perceived time being the 3 times, present time or real time, the unreal time, which was sort of like a historic time, and the imaginary time, which gave us the idea that we could plan. We thought of the future. We could never know the future, of course, but we had this idea. And I just thought that, that this could be a possible definition of consciousness, something that eluded scientists for many a long day. Could it be that consciousness is when the 3 aspects of time are all present? That gives human beings this idea of consciousness, of being alive. Is there another level of consciousness? Well, in the first instance we use the Trinitarian equation, and to think of an increase in consciousness, another level of consciousness, we would have to turn to the quaternary equation. And we have to introduce the other term, which is the minus imaginary time. Okay, it might very well enable us to know the future. But we know from our calculation that this quaternary equation also describes the pleroma absolutely nothing. It is absolutely without residue or remainder. There is nothing in the pleroma. So this is very unlikely, according to my theory. Okay. The way that we might have an increased consciousness, though, is by increasing our senses. At the moment, our real time, we use our senses, the nose, the ears, the eyes, the mouth, the touch, the fingers. But it is possible that in the future that we may develop a 6th sense. I believe that our brain has the capability, but it hasn't been triggered into effect yet. It hasn't been called upon. But this will enable us probably to know what other people are thinking. For those people that have this 6th sense, it could be a life changer. And when the disciples were talking about who shall inherit the earth, and Jesus gave the answer that it could be the meek, could he have been thinking about people who are next in line to gain the 6th sense? Because surely whoever inherits, whoever gets the 6th sense will inherit the earth.